I'm Sophie Baker, International News Editor at Pensions and Investments and the Director of Programming at the World Pension Summit. And I'm very pleased to welcome here today for our expert talk, Sanjeev Gupta, Executive Director for Financial Services at Africa Finance Corporation. Hello, Sanjeev, how are you?
I'm very good, Sophie. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. So in the run-up to the World Pension Summit in The Hague in October, we're welcoming Sanjeev to have a conversation about AFC as one of our sponsors for the World Pension Summit. So, Sanjeev, could you tell us a little bit about AFC and your mission?
Yeah, most certainly. And thanks for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, Sophie. So hopefully, quite simply, the way to understand AFC is that it's relatively a new organization. It's only been around for 16 odd years. It was created as sort of an initiative between African governments and the African private sector, which got together and said that let's create an institution funded by African capital as opposed to global capital per se. And let's use Africa's scarce capital through a public-private model to look into developing Africa's industrial and infrastructure base. So that is how the original mandate was conceived and created. So there are three unique aspects to the construct, therefore. One is the fact that it was started with African capital. The second was it was a public-private partnership from day one. And third is that it had a very clear focus that it wanted to develop and find financing solutions for what we considered, or the founders considered, the core sectors of Africa's challenges, which is infrastructure and industrial development.
Interesting. Okay. Definitely, when I've been talking to our advisory board for the World Pension Summit, Africa as an investment destination has come up repeatedly as a topic of conversation. So when institutional investors consider Africa as an investment destination, are there particular pockets of opportunity within the continent, and also, particular areas and sectors that we should be focusing on as sort of investment opportunities and destinations?
Yeah, I'm amused by the choice of your words when you say pocket, because I think it's a question of how big is the pocket. And I'll explain it in a way that hopefully makes sense. So, often we get asked, Sophie, what has been the reason for your success? Because over the last 16 years, we have proven, if you look at our financials, that from a one country operation in 16 years, we are a 40 country operation. From $1 billion of capital that was put behind us, we are now an institution that has successfully deployed more than $14 billion across these 40 countries. We started off when people thought that this sort of a model will not work, but consistently the institution has remained profitable, paid dividends to its shareholders, and most importantly, has maintained an extraordinarily high credit rating of A3 by Moody's, which people who understand Africa will appreciate what sort of a gold dust rating that is, if that's the right way to put it. And the reason we've been successful, Sophie, and hopefully that'll allow me to answer your question, is that we have always looked at infrastructure development not in isolation, but as a way to develop Africa's economic model. And in order to do so, we've always said that infrastructure cannot be commercially and viably developed unless there's an industrial base for it. And the industrial base cannot happen on the African continent unless we start adding value to our primary products, be it agricultural goods, be it minerals, be it oil, be it gas, so that we call it this triangle between infrastructure, industry, and value addition, which kind of de-risks investments and almost creates its own ecosystem, if you like, of feeding off each other. And that's the reason why we have managed to be successful. So to answer your question in that context, I always like to say it this way, that don't think of Africa as an opportunity only, or certainly stop thinking of Africa as a problem child.
Mhm.
Think of Africa instead as a solution to your own problems. And I'll explain that. Today, if you look at the global problems that we are dealing with, what are the global problems we are dealing with, Sophie? We are dealing with climate. We are dealing with, what you call nearshoring, friendshoring, diversifying of your supply chain challenges. We are dealing with food security. We are dealing with energy security, generally speaking. We are also dealing with search for new markets for businesses, right? And most importantly, not a tongue-in-cheek comment, it's an honest comment, the Western world is also dealing with the challenge of managing illegal migration. So if you kind of put it all together, Africa sits in the middle of all the solutions that you seek, because Africa has the largest amount of arable land, largest amount of natural resources, 1.3 billion people, so on and so forth. So when you ask me where are the opportunities are across sectors. And most importantly, the opportunities, if you harvest, it solves your own problems and not just Africa's problems, if you see where I'm coming from.
Absolutely. And that's a very important thing, this sort of symbiosis too, right? That's something
Correct.
really important. I mean, you mentioned climate, and it's a huge topic right now, of course, green and the energy transition. And we're absolutely delighted to have one of your colleagues presenting on that topic at the summit in October. What is Africa Finance Corporation and Africa's role in the successful transition to a low carbon economy, both from the Africa point of view, but from a global point of view too?
So I'll deal with this question in two ways. One is on a more sort of direct basis. I'll just explain to you what AFC's role has been, and then I'll try and bring some nuances into the argument, if I may. So just as a straight answer to your question, what is AFC doing? AFC was the first African institution to be accredited by the Green Climate Fund, which was many years back. I'm just sort of setting context to what I want to say. As I speak today, AFC is partner to the largest renewable energy platform on the continent today, right? As I speak again today, AFC is a pioneer in having set up a $500 million climate resilient fund, which has been funded with $250 million from the Green Climate Fund. If you look at some of the energy projects that AFC has done, AFC did what was then Africa's first wind power project in Cape Verde. If you look at our deal pipeline on energy side, you will see that majority of them are renewable assets and renewable sources. The reason I'm citing these is to say to you, Sophie, that there is opportunities in the renewable space. There is opportunities to do infrastructure in a climate resilient manner. There is also opportunity, by the way, to develop traditional mining projects in a climate responsible way. And we are in the midst of it. So I don't think we need to say too much as far as our own credentials are concerned in taking the climate challenge as a responsibility and therefore operate in a manner that is climate responsible. So I'll leave that aside for now. And I'll just bring in the nuance that I want your listeners to get to. And that is that I don't know how many of you appreciate that Africa, even today, emits less than 3% of global emissions, right? Africa has huge amounts of oil and gas resources which are untapped, right? Africa has a population where less than half the population gets consistent and reliable power supply, right? Africa also has large number of countries who, if they're not able to develop their fossil fuel industry, will simply not have the earnings that is required to fund its own fiscal balance its fiscal deficits, or for that matter, provide development finance domestically. So the nuance that I want people to appreciate is if you look at any energy mix, anywhere in any conversation, there is no energy mix that says no oil, no gas, no coal. It talks net zero, right?
Yeah.
Then if you see the more recent conversations that has emanated from Europe principally after the Ukraine war. It is about gas being a transition fuel, which incidentally wasn't being talked about until the war happened. So what we really want to bring to the eyes and minds and hearts, for that matter, of the decision makers is don't make it a linear argument saying you will not develop and invest in your fossil fuels while we still will do so, because for us, energy supply is important. Energy supply is important for everybody. So energy diversity has to be nuanced with energy supply security. And that's how I would like the conversation to flow, because nowhere in the world are they stopping it completely. So why starve a region which has the resources and has the requirement to develop these resources responsibly?
Fascinating. Well, I mean, I'm absolutely looking forward to your participation in our investment panel and to the expert talk as well for the energy transition. Really looking forward to Africa Finance Corporation's participation in the World Pension Summit. Thank you, Sanjeev, so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and can't wait to hear more in The Hague.
I look forward to, Sophie, and thank you very, very much for allowing me to say some of the things that I wanted to say through your questions. Appreciate it.
Not at all. Thank you.